In this lesson, I'm going to explain how you can use deform properties to twist, taper, bend, and shear extruded 3D objects. You can contort the heck out of 3D objects using deform properties. It gives you all sorts of creative possibilities. To see how that works, let's start up Photoshop. Let's create a new document by going File, New. I'm taking my 1200 by 1200 one here and clicking OK. And now I want to work with shapes, because shapes are kind of fun to work with when you're playing with these various deform properties. We'll talk about deforming text in a separate chapter, so let's just work with shapes here. Go down and click on the Shape tool here and select the Custom Shape here at the bottom. I've already got the crown selected here. You can select basically what you want, but the crown kind of works pretty effectively here because it's symmetrical on the vertical axis. Let's just go down and show you where that is. Down here toward the bottom a ways, there's the crown. Let's just close you down. Now draw a crown here by just dragging it out. I have the path selected here. You could select shape or pixels, but I've got path selected. So I'm going to go over here to the 3D panel and click on the path, which lets me choose only 3D extrusion. Click Create. And there's our 3D extrusion. Click on it to make it active, and you can see it going off in the distance there. All right, let's go over to the Deform panel. That's over here in the Properties panel for the layer. If I have something else selected, you won't see it. But I go here and click on the layer. There's Properties, and the Deform is the second one right here. Click on that. That opens up this Deform panel. And there are several options here, including presets, extrusion depth, twist, taper, and then bend and shear. If I go back to this first one, you'll see there are shape presets here as well, plus extrusion, but you have the option of selecting all of them over here. So you might as well stay in this panel for the most part. Also, when you change panels here, notice what happens with the controller. It goes from the widget to this guy, which basically controls all of these things here. Pretty remarkable that one tool can do all that. I'll show you how to use that in a moment. Let's start off with twist. If I go to twist, if I go to the right, if I go to a positive twist, it twists it clockwise in the back. Go to negative, it twists it in a negative or counterclockwise direction. Some people say anti-clockwise. Once you've kind of messed things up like this, you can undo it very easily by going here to Reset Deformation like that. So I'll just reset it. And now we'll take a look at taper. Taper kind of just pushes it off to the back or pulls it forward. Right now it's set at 100%. If I make it larger, it just makes it wider in the back, like so. If I make it smaller, it starts pulling it in. If I go to 0, it becomes a point and turns black. Let me show you that by just pulling it around like this. Not very appealing, but if you go to just 1, for example, then you get your contours back, like so. There you go, it looks much nicer there. The direction that it goes is straight back. That's because the deformation axis is set to the middle there by default. But if I click the upper right-hand corner, you can see we can pull it up like that. Over there, down to the left, which you barely can see, down to the right. You can see that works, straight down. We'll go back to the default view here. You can use this deformation axis thing as well with the bend. So let's take a look at that. I'll reset things here. Bend basically just takes this thing and twists it around on itself. If I do it horizontally, it comes toward us and then bends around like so to the right. If I go positive, negative, it goes that way. Nevertheless, it comes around on itself there. Kind of collapses on itself in the middle. See how that works? When we get to about 180 degrees, you start seeing it kind of collapsing on itself there. That's the result of both the extrusion amount and the deformation axis. If I click on the right one here, it'll shove it way off to the right, so much so that you can't see it anymore. Let me click on this little star here to go back to the mesh. That puts on the widget again. I can kind of shrink things down a bit so you can see it. Slide it left a bit. There it is. You see how it wraps around like that? That's because of the deformation axis. I'll go back to the deform properties there. If I go back to the center, you'll see that it gets kind of crunched on itself again. I'll click on this guy and we'll zoom in again. I can fix this by adjusting the extrusion depth. Go back to deform here and increase the extrusion. You'd think the reverse would be true, but increase it, that slides it to the right. Decreases it, puts it like that. If I wrap it all the way around to 360, then it kind of collapses around on itself and creates an object. I'll go back here and shrink it down a bit so you can get a better view of it. If you look at it from the top here, you can see how it looks sort of like a chess piece or an urn. And slide this guy to the right there like that, and we can rotate around it a bit. Take a look at that. Notice the blue lines there. That's telling you that's the original shape. That also tells you that you can't add an internal constraint to this because you need to have that edge being flat in front of you when you add another constraint. So it's basically saying, sorry, can't make another one there, but that shows you the original constraints. Twist you around a little bit like so. Let's reset that by clicking this button here in the regular mesh properties panel like that. Let's go back to the deform properties there. You can do it vertically as well. It can come around on its own. creating this shape that was very much like it looked from the top. Do that. Let's go to shear. Shear is a little strange. It kind of just sort of drags it off to the side here, but doesn't bend it around. I'll go to the right here. See how it just kind of pulls it to the right? Look at the top view here. And we can reset that. Click on shear again and go to the vertical side of things, like so. Pull that one back too. Let's take a look at how you can use this controller over here. I'll reset the deformation like that. And we'll just kind of hover over the controller. You see there are several elements to it. This blue ring on the outside lets you adjust the twist. Now it looks like you need to click on this little guy on the top to do that, but you don't have to. You can just click anywhere inside this blue ring and it does the same thing. Next thing in is the bend. It says bend X and Y. So it doesn't make a difference which one you click on here. That'll control the X and Y values in any event. So I can bend up. That takes care of the Y mainly. If I go to the left, that's a little bit of X and Y. So all four of those guys do the same thing. Now what happens to shear? Well, you need to turn on shear and then have this inner guy be shear instead of bend. That's the difference. So switch back to bend here. Next guy in is the taper. Pull that one up, taper's wide, pull it down, taper's narrow. And finally the center one is the extrusion. Pull it down, it makes it a narrower extrusion. Push up, it goes back, like so. I think it's a good idea to look at some of these presets to give you just a better idea of the various things that happen here. Let's go to the preset here. The top ones mainly are bevels and inflations, which I'll talk about in a different lesson, which we work on in this particular property group over there. Let's scroll down a little bit here to see the other guys. Now you begin to see some deform things. This is taper grow, it means it gets wide. This one's called taper shrink, makes it narrow like that, as you'd expect. This one's a shear, and this one's going to be a twist, 90 degrees. These things obviously you know how to do now, but this does give you kind of a starting point. This one twists 360. There you go. You rotate that so you can get a better look at it. Let's move on down the line here. Where you got a bunch more here. This one twists 540, so 360 plus another half turn around. Gets it kind of large as well. Let's go take a look at this thing and see what's going on there. Look at it, it says 540 as you'd expect, but how come it gets wide like that? The reason it gets wide is because the deformation axis goes to the right. If I put it back to the center, it doesn't expand it like that. It just puts it sort of where you'd expect. But if you put it off to the side, then it grows it in certain ways. So we'll go back and reset that guy. Change on down to this one here. This one brings it around essentially 90 degrees. This one brings it around 180 degrees. Down here you can see that. The reason it spreads out so nicely there is because the deformation axis is off to the right there. Let's go on down this one where it wraps it around on itself. You've seen that. Wraps it halfway here. I'll rotate around that one a little bit. See this 90 degrees in the center there. And we'll reset it now. And finally, go to this guy, which creates this absolutely monstrous thing. Let's click on this first one so we can sort of tone it down so we can see it a little bit better. See what this guy's all about. Rotate around a little bit on that one. Holy cow, look at that. What's going on here? Let's just take a look at the properties. Extrusion depth is huge, monstrous. Up to the upper right-hand corner here, the twist is 10 times, and the taper is down to half, as it tapers off into the distance there. If I rotate around some more here, clicking on this first one and using the widget to rotate around a little bit more like that, maybe you can see it better this way. Let me go back here, and we'll have the taper be even narrower. See how that works? Taper it down almost like some kind of crazy screw like that. I want to show you one more thing that you might consider when you're working with the deform properties. Let's just turn off the eyeball and make a new layer. I want to try a different shape here, so I click on the shape tool again, go up to here. I look for things that have horizontal or vertical symmetry, like a light bulb, for example, or a teardrop, something like that, that I can wrap things around. And here's a vertical symmetry there, for example, or this has vertical symmetry, this has vertical and horizontal symmetry. These guys can all be wrapped around onto themselves to create solid objects in those shapes. So for example, let's just take a look at the light bulb here. This one. Close you down. Drag on the light bulb. Create a shape out of that by going to 3D Extrusion, Work Path, click Create. Now all we need to do is go over here to the Deform by clicking on the layer, clicking on Deform. And you notice sometimes things don't come up. Sometimes those little controllers don't show up. What you can do then is use a preset, go to here, twist it around onto itself. Now you've got your own little light. Now you need to kind of adjust things a little bit. Let's take the extrusion down a bit. You can get rid of that hole in the middle. There we go. Actually make it into a real, true looking light bulb like that. We'll get rid of the hole, keep on pulling it down. So sometimes when you don't see these little guys show up, I think that's just a little bug. Nevertheless, when you see that, you can still work with it over here like this, or you can type in numbers over here. Let's just rotate you around and see that we created a solid light bulb, which you can do with basically anything that has symmetry, be it vertical symmetry or horizontal symmetry, because you can always use the bend here horizontally or vertically. So you can see there are all sorts of things you can do with the deform properties. I hope that I've whetted your appetite.